Hey y'all, it's Katie. Welcome back to From My Vanity. Today we are going to be doing eye swatches of the new Midas Cosmetics x Smokey Glow palette. If you didn't know, this is a collaboration with Hannah from Smokey Glow here on YouTube, and she collaborated with Midas to create this palette. Per usual though, before we dive into the eye swatches, I do like to go over all of the supplies that I'm using to do these eye swatches. I use this Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define Concealer as my base for all of the eye swatches on both eyes, and for this video I did use this sponge to blend it out. For all of the swatches that you see me do on my right eye, I do set that with powder, and I am using this COTY AIrspun loose setting powder and this LUXIE brush to just very gently sweep a little bit onto my right eyelid, just so you guys can see the difference between a set base and a tacky base. For all of the blending into the crease, I'm going to be using this E40 brush. I just feel like it's very standard. And then I'm also going to be using this Sonia Kashuk Tools number 28 brush to pack all the mattes onto my lid. For any shimmers that need to be packed onto my lid, I'm using this Stilazzi L221 brush. And then to clean my makeup brush off between the swatches, I have this JCat Dry Makeup Brush Cleaner. And then to clean my eyes, I just use this Ulta Beauty eye makeup remover and a little cotton pad. And then after that, to dry my eyes off and make sure all the oil is removed, I'm using the original makeup eraser. Okay, so diving in, we are starting with the first shadow in the palette, which is Basic. I felt like it was a little unnecessary to swatch this on my eyes, but in the spirit of this video, I'm swatching it on my eyes, and as you can see with the tacky base, it does show up very nicely. It is definitely a thinner formula when it comes to white. It's nothing intensely pigmented or thick, but Midas Cosmetics formula overall is a thinner type of formula. Going on with Friends, I am going to be blending all the shimmers into my crease as well because I got requests for it. Feel free to let me know what you think about that down below. I am not someone who uses shimmers in the crease, but I got a couple of people asking, so that's why I've been doing it. But anyway, I thought it applied to the lid very nice. It's definitely a more of a it's still shimmery, but it's a very gentle shimmer, not satin, but a very gentle, soft shimmer. And I would imagine if you got this wet, it would definitely intensify. I did notice on a set base though, it was a lot softer and a lot harder to really get it to adhere and show up on my eyelid. So I definitely prefer the tacky base. Diving into Jumpcuts, this is a very pretty shade, and as you can see, I thought it was very opaque and blendable and very buildable. On the set side, you can see it does a little bit of skipping, or not even skipping, but just it takes a little bit of work to blend that in and get it to really stick and transfer to my eyes, which is typically why I always prefer a tacky base. But because not everyone does, that's why I do this comparison. And as you can see, it's definitely a lot softer on the set side just because the color and vibrancy couldn't really adhere, as well as on the tacky side. Group Chat is a gorgeous shade, but oh my goodness, is this a flaky shade, and I hated blending that into my crease because when I tell you I had flaky little shimmery pink stuff all over my face the rest of the day, I did, and I got it all over my children too. But anyway, it packs on nicely to the lid. I thought it was very beautiful. It is, like I said, a very flaky shadow, so as you can see, I'm using my finger to put a little more, and also just to help with the smoothing out because it's so flaky. It almost is a formula that just wants to stand up on your lid. So this is a formula I'm really going to be interested in using a glitter glue underneath because I feel like it'll just help it lay down so much smoother. Next up is Rose. This shade is so vibrant and beautiful. They did a really good job with the intensity of the shadows, and even though this is such a vibrant shade, as you can see, it blends out very beautifully and packs onto the lid just as gorgeously and pigmented and bright as you would expect it and as you see it in the pan. And as you can see, like, it's just so easy to work with on the tacky side. On the set side, once again, you're gonna see this throughout the whole video. It just takes a little bit more work, and it's just always a little bit softer on the set side. So I think I'm gonna just stop pointing that out at this point. But that's really to be expected when you put it on top of a base that has been set already with powder. It's just a little difficult, I find, for eyeshadows in general, but Midas's formula to really stick to. Going in with Milano, this is another one of those very flaky, shimmery, metallic shades in the palette. Another shadow that I would say really needs to be set with some type of glitter glue, either sprayed with a brush, just something to help lay all that down. It's just such a flaky formula and so soft, and as you can see, I just like to pat over it with my finger just to kind of, as I said, lay everything down and help smooth everything over. I do want to point out here though that this video is an eye swatch video and just the first impressions. I have not used any of these in looks, so definitely stay tuned. I will be doing a 3 looks 1 palette soon, but I just wanted to get this video out there as my first impressions and so you guys can see how each of the shadows work on the eyes. Next up we go into Nutty. This is not as flaky and soft as Group Chat and Leno. It's much more like Friends, which is just a softer, finer formula, smoother formula. So it's the formula I prefer just because it's not as messy. And as you can see, it goes on beautifully and it's a very gorgeous, iridescent, shifty. I'm not good at describing it, so definitely check out Hannah's video and she goes into all that. But as you can see, it applies it beautifully and no complaints on the tacky side. And even on the set side, I thought it applied really nicely, and while it took a little bit more work and a little bit more pressure to get it to really stick down and adhere to the set side, it still looks beautifully and honestly is pretty intense, even though like the iridescentness of the shadow is just a little bit understated on that side. Next up we have Colleagues. This is a hot pink. It's just a fun shade. Yeah, once again, no complaints on the sticky side. I love how Midas's formula, even if you put it on top of a tacky base and even if it's a very intense, vibrant color, it just blends out very effortlessly and builds out beautifully. Her formula is just always so spot on and easy to work with. Even on the set side, I feel like it still goes on and applies smoothly. The only difference really is just that it's a softer color. So if you're someone who doesn't want that intensity of the hot pink, try setting it and it'll definitely tone it down a little bit. Next up with Warrior, blending it in, it's a beautiful shade that just goes on really smoothly. As you can see a little bit there where I put the most pressure in my eye socket, it did get the darkest, so this is a shade that might be a little difficult to blend out if you apply too heavy-handedly, so I definitely would say go in with a light hand. But as you can see, like, just look how intensely red and matte and gorgeous that shade is. Absolutely love it and cannot wait to use that in a look. And as you can see on the set side, it does look a little patchy when I'm packing it onto the lid, but that's basically the reason why I always, whenever I'm doing an all matte look, I always make sure I have a tacky base just because the mattes go on so much more intensely and smoothly. And next up, going with the Vote, as you can see, it wanted to stick a little bit in the crease and it's a little skippy. So that is a shade I'm going to be curious to see how it performs when I'm creating looks with it. But at the end of this eye look, I did think it looked okay. It's just took a little bit extra time, and I felt like if I wanted it to look really good, I should have taken more time with the blending back and forth and really perfecting it. But keep in mind with all these eye swatches, I'm not really going for perfection and beautifully blending just because I have so many shadows to put on my eyes. So I'm just really wanting to give you guys an idea of how they blend and how they pack on onto the lid. Next up with Instagram Model, this is that formula that I do prefer. It's a much finer, softer, not flaky like Leno or Group Chat. It's a very finer formula. And as you can see, it is very beautiful and applies, in my opinion, very easily. Now keep in mind this is a smaller brush, so that's why I go back and forth a lot, just because it's a tinier brush. So I have to work a little harder to make sure I get all of my eyelid. But yeah, overall I thought it was a very easy shade to apply to my lid, even on the side that was set. Next up for Amazing, this is a really vibrant red, but it's a lot more deep. And as you can see, there was a bit of skipping, but I kept blending, and in my opinion, it worked itself out pretty well with just a little bit more product. So while this may be a shadow you have to spend a little more time on, I feel like it shouldn't be that difficult to work with, just because, as I said, with a little bit of extra blending, it did blend out. On the set side, I felt like I had the most issues. As you can see, even with the extra blending, I didn't think it looked that great. And then trying to pack it on the lid looked very patchy. So definitely preferred it on the tacky side. Next up we have a low, and it's not that flaky type of formula like Leno and group chat. I personally wouldn't use any of these shimmers in the crease, but this looks fine in the crease in my opinion, and as you can see, it applies smoothly on the lid. Not the greatest on the side of the set base, but overall both I think look just fine and went on very easily. Next we have Half Pony, and this is a really deep color, so keep that in mind as I'm blending this into my crease. This isn't typically a shade I would use to kind of start my look anyway, but as you can see, there's a little bit of a tendency to skip and stick in certain areas, but packing it onto the lid, I loved how intense and pigmented and just smooth it looked on my lid. And again, I'm not going to really perfect the edges, so keep that in mind. That's not really the fault of the shadow, that's just me not taking all that time to really smooth it out, but I thought packing it on the tacky side was really pretty. Moving on to a Rant, this is a really pretty shade to put all over the lid. I am excited to use it in a look, and considering how easy it was to apply on the tacky side, I was also really pleased to see how smoothly and easy it was to apply onto the set side. Next up is Cold Brew. This is another shade that I kind of felt pointless to apply just because it's so light, but as you can see, it is nicely pigmented and you can tell it's there. Next up is Content. This is another really bright matte shade, and as you can see, it wanted to skip a little bit. I feel like just because it's a deeper color and maybe I didn't take that much time with blending, but overall it's very pretty. I love how intense the color was when I packed it onto the lid. And very last up, we have NOFA. This was really scary when I was blending it into my crease, but can we just all appreciate the fact that even though this is a shimmer and a super dark color, it blended out into my crease really nicely on the tacky side. And check out how beautiful it is on my lid. Like, I was applying this and I was like, oh my goodness, I almost want to do an entire look with just using this one shadow in my crease and on my lid. It is so beautiful. And then just out of curiosity, I did want to try to wet this since this was my last eye look to do. So I did wet it and go over just my right eye. But yeah, look at that. It's so beautiful and I love the way it catches the light as I turn my head. But yeah, that is a Midas Cosmetics Smokey Glow palette. I hope you guys found this video helpful. On the screen are the 2 other YouTubers that do eye swatches and who I got inspiration from to start doing eye swatches on my channel. Let me know if there are any other new palette releases that you would like to see eye swatches of next. And with all that said, I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys.